Hey, fellas. So, here is an age-old question. Are traps gay? Easy now. Lay down your pitchforks and torches. Before you cancel me, this was a rhetorical question. The answer is, of course, that there is no such thing as a trap. It's a slur that implies entrapment and plays on cis men's fear of being seduced into losing their masculinity. An ephemeral concept in and of itself, one I struggle to denote as having any basis in reality. Thing is, in order to make my point, I'll have to rely the opinions of people who are wrong and stupid, as well as talk about unsavory concepts of Japanese media. So unfortunate trigger warning, transphobia. Now that I hopefully managed to calm you all down, and before I lost you, introduction. I am the one and only true Eminem coming at you from Weeb Revolution. Today, we're going to be retreading some old grounds that people much smarter than myself have already given their input on, as well as providing some new insights into a subject matter that should no longer be controversial, to just state bluntly. That being, the Japanese creators' sheer clumsiness when it comes to portraying trans themes. One last note before we start, I am not a trans person. While we all struggle under capitalism, I do not know nor could I ever imagine what is it like to have dysphoria. I am a shameless, perverted, contrarian trash goblin that likes to pretend he knows anything about socialism. And Pike from Hunter x Hunter is my spirit animal. So I am not the best guy to put this whole argument forward. It is my hope, though, that it can stand on its own, regardless of how much of a garbage person I personally am. Okay? Okay. So now that I lovingly smothered you with addendums and prefaces, let's get to the meat of it. The first part of the second season of Re Zero ended airing not too long ago. Actually, fairly long ago in internet time, but no human force on this earth managed to stop me from procrastinating yet. And it was okay. Subwoofer is still his wretched self, but at least we got witches out of it, and that's always cool. I love witches, that's my favorite fantasy archetype. We are not here to talk about the second season though, not really. We're here to go beyond the televised anime into the light novels and the discussion around the work in order to talk about one specific character, her portrayal, and what years of terrible framing had done to make all of this an unnecessarily complicated mess. That character is Ferris Argyle, the cat girl serving Lady Crush and playfully accosting Submarine on multiple occasions. Cool little tidbit of trivia first, and something you wouldn't know just from watching the anime. Did you guys know there is actually a distinction between Ferris and Felix? It's not just a phonetic reading of the character's name written in katakana, as you would expect. I mean, it is basically that, but there is more to it. Felix is actually her original name, which she discarded to call herself Ferris. So it's an actual dead name, and as such I will not be referring to the character by it, but I'm telling you this because I didn't know that, and for the longest time I kept referring to Ferris as Felix because I think it's inherently silly to mispronounce English names in Japanese. I was wrong! Nuances of language are cool like that. Moving on. Ferris falls into a common trope of Japanese media uncharitably described by the Western audience as trap. Though, to be entirely fair, the Japanese term for such characters isn't very flattering either. Otokonoko literally translates as boy-girl. While frustratingly inaccurate and steeped in gender essentialism, at least it does not suggest entrapment. I have not yet encountered the term that I would be comfortable using to describe these characters, so if you find one, give me a call. Please don't actually call me, I will not respond, I will sneer and bite like an angry possum. As with most character tropes in anime, your tsunderes, your derederes, your ojo-samas, your lolis, and your oni-chans, this archetype exists for one reason. And I will state this very bluntly. For the purposes of fetishistic adulation by the audience. This does not mean these characters cannot be compelling. This does not mean a given creator can't have a more lofty goal when constructing a character. It's just to say that years of cynically treating anime like an entertainment equivalent of a fast food joint by the studios, catering to our lowest instincts, resulted in this being an unaccepted and unquestioned status quo. Even if a given work is consciously trying to avoid doing that, the audience will subconsciously insert this assumption anyway. What's frustrating is that weebs are hell-bent on denying that that's even a thing, and I have no patience for those that do. Of course, as I've stated above, I am an unabashed pervert, So perhaps I am biased. But for what it's worth, I ventured outside of my comfort zone to look for counter-arguments to this position and found them wanting. I engaged with ace voices in the Weeb subculture as well to see what the opinion of people who are literally incapable of being sexually exploited in this way is, and what I found is frustration at often being unable to connect with characters in anime specifically because they seemingly exist solely for the purposes of titillation. What I'm saying is, don't at me bro, I'm right, you're wrong, yeah. However, my status as a proud pervert means I don't actually have a particular problem with the state of things. I have one on a conceptual level, but I like when my sexuality is teased, and thank you very much. Like, if the media I consume was created in a socialist environment, I'd still want this kind of media to exist. The problem is that when fetishistic media starts to push out any and all genuine character portrayal, we're left with the kind of discussion that surrounds Ferris. I must stress, this is not just a trans character portrayal problem. It's a problem in general, but it's more of an issue for trans characters because while there was a period of time when characters could just be written as multifaceted, complex individuals that we'd connect with, trans characters were never really afforded the same degree of courtesy. You can count on the fingers of a retired lumberjack's hand the number of trans characters who are just, like, characters and not fetish fuel. Chivalry of the Failed Knight represent. And here, we reach the ultimate dilemma of this video. Because Ferris is actually, honest to God, just that kind of a well-written trans character. Mind fucking blown, right? Let me give you an excerpt from the novels written from the perspective of Ferris about herself. The first order of business, in the morning, was to address the reflection in the mirror. Cute! I'm a girlish young woman, a wonderful and cute girl. For quite a long time now, this has been the mantra. The words repeated like magic. No, not like magic. They were magic, for all intents and purposes. A magic spell was simply words that contained the power to change things, to affect the way the world worked. A vow to oneself that brought about change could be called nothing less. Now, as I said, I'm not a trans person. But I'll be damned if this isn't one of the most accurate and compelling portrayals of a trans person's struggle I've ever seen, and of course I have affirmation from trans people I know on this. There is no ambiguity here, no discussion, no possible ways to interpret it differently. So that's it, right? Case closed. I got what I wanted. Eat shit, haters, right? Oh boy, if it only were that easy. The discussion surrounding Ferris is a very toxic one, for two reasons. One is the author's bumbling clumsiness when it comes to addressing the straightforward question of Ferris' transness, and the much bigger issue of the Weeb fanbase's unwillingness to accept it in order to preserve a fetish. For the fandom's response part, while it's the more overbearing issue, there isn't that much to say about it, it's just gross, and frankly, a little beyond my understanding. A lot of it seems to stem from the old place we know well by now, seeing a nefarious leftist agenda everywhere. Here, I have to note how funny it is to see Weebs cry about a girlish character presenting as a girl and actually being a girl in a medium already saturated to the brim with effeminate men in an era of unprecedented support for femboys. You'd think that this nefarious leftist agenda would attempt to smuggle itself into a space it hasn't already been dominating for the past 2 decades. You'd also think that at least some of these people would be elated at the idea that the character they've been fapping to incessantly is actually a girl, so they can reassure themselves that they're not gay. But apparently, there is a homo-fascist subgroup that I now have to consider. Regardless, I'm not crazy, so I ain't gonna explain to you how crazies think. The author's response part is much more interesting. In interviews and Q&As, he seems to be of two minds about this. On one hand, he stated that Ferris is a boy in body and soul, and that she adopted her appearance and attitude as a result of a promise made to Lady Crush. The fans, by the way, will be very quick to use these tidbits as a weird crutch whenever they can, as if it was some kind of a silver bullet, which it's not. On the other hand, he clearly understands that this is not a simple matter of duty for Ferris, as he also pointed out in the same interview that Ferris would not go back. There isn't even anything to go back to. Ferris is a girl, she'd be pretending to be a boy. It is frustrating to see this level of simultaneous comprehension and lack thereof from the author of the work. This presents an interesting conundrum from a literary perspective. Is it possible for an author to craft a compelling trans experience without meaning to? The evidence suggests that it is, and that would imply that meaning itself lies far beyond mere author's intentions and at the intersection of their intent, the audience's expectations and biases, and the unique social and historical context the work exists in at any given time. In this reading, meaning is an emergent property existing in its own dimension. And yet, the author cannot be divorced from this conversation altogether. He is in control of the intellectual property, and what seems now to be a very genuine and affirming portrayal of a trans girl can very quickly turn into a jumbled mess of contradictory subtext. Of course, the answer to this problem cannot lie in unquestionably accepting the proverbial word of God on the matter. I am a dirty socialist. I believe in no gods, only in people. I reject this childish simplification and strive for self-actualization. But this speaks to the broader problem in the Japanese media. Even if we didn't have to contend with the fetishistic reductionism for the sake of exploiting the lowest common denominator, the plight of trans character portrayal would probably remain unchanged because Japan does not seem to get it. Tapei's comment about Ferris doing what she's doing out of a sense of duty is quite telling. It seems like the Japanese people may not even have a framing tool to understand the trans perspective in any other way. Or, and this would be much less charitable, they do, but choose to ignore it for pragmatic reasons. I lean towards the latter. This concept of duty is very strong in the minds of Japanese authors, but of course, this is a constructed concept, created fairly recently to further Japan's nationalistic goals. It's a result of propaganda. Ironically, it's somewhat akin to the mantra Ferris keeps telling her reflection in the mirror, just one not rooted in reality. But what are we, the lowly consumers, left to do with all this? Hell, it's not like I can deprogram an entire nation worth of people. I wish I had that power and get me drunk enough, and I'll insist that I do, but I actually don't. I don't know, but I have a few words of encouragement. Forge your own meaning. Ferris is trans, regardless of what the scum may say, regardless of Tapei's lack of framing devices to contextualize his own creation, and regardless of Japan's cultural policy, and nobody's gonna take that away from you. Because Tapei is right about one thing. There is power in self-affirmation through language. Words are magical, and we are all witches casting a grand spell of perception. So let's wield that magic proudly. You're beautiful, you're valid, and you look lovely in cat ears. This was Eminem, and thank you for watching.